the quiet corners of the world, where the promise of solitude beckons, we often seek refuge from the relentless pace of modern life. A quaint cottage perched precariously by the sea, an Airbnb promising escape and inspiration, can feel like the ultimate sanctuary. For Claire Hayes, a writer yearning for tranquility amidst the rugged beauty of coastal Maine, Oakhaven's cliffside retreat was meant to be precisely that haven, a place where the rhythmic crash of waves would soothe and creativity could flourish far from the intrusions of a bustling world. But the most profound peace can often mask the most profound dangers. What happens when the very sanctuary one seeks becomes the carefully prepared stage for a silent predator? When the trusted guide, the smiling host, harbors a darkness that eclipses even the most tempestuous ocean storm, the alluring promise of privacy, the security of a private booking can, in the wrong hands, transform into the most sophisticated of traps. How quickly can a dream escaped descend into an inescapable nightmare, and who truly owns the secrets buried in plain sight? The rugged coastline of Oakhaven, Maine, with its ancient cliffs and sighing pines, promised an unparalleled escape. It was this very allure of solitude that drew Clara Hayes, a 32-year-old digital nomad, to the cliffside retreat, a charming Airbnb clinging to the ocean's edge. Claire, possessing bright, observant eyes and a laugh that warmed any room, yearned for a quiet space to delve into her writing, to recalibrate away from the relentless churn of urban life. Her passion for abstract art was evident in the compact travel easel she always carried, her ordered existence reflected in the precise packing of her eco-friendly car. Between her and her younger sister, Emily, lay a bond forged deep, a constant thread of shared experiences and unwavering support. Claire arrived on a crisp Tuesday afternoon, her vehicle well stocked with books, a laptop, and a fresh canvas anticipating inspiration. Her host, Arthur Finch, a man in his late 40s, with a carefully sculpted beard and an air of quiet self-possession, greeted her with a practiced, welcoming smile. He offered a comprehensive tour of the rustic cottage, emphasizing its secluded nature and the breathtaking ocean vistas from the primary bedroom. Clara, always mindful of social niceties, registered his gaze as a touch too intense, but swiftly rationalized it as the earnestness of a host committed to guest satisfaction. Her initial days unfolded in a rhythm of long walks along the bluffs, the ocean's rhythmic roar a calming cadence to her creative endeavors. The wild, untamed beauty of the landscape fueled her prompting sketches of gnarled trees and the endless, captivating horizon. Joyful messages reached Emily detailing Oakhaven's sublime beauty and the swift progress of her novel. "It's truly perfect here." One text bubbled exactly what I needed. "The quiet is an absolute blessing." On Friday evening, a cheerful video call connected the sisters, Clara showcasing the dramatic sunset from her window, her face aglow in the fading light. She firmly promised to call again on Monday morning, a ritual they rarely, if ever, allowed to lapse. That Monday, the expected call remained utterly silent. Emily, initially dismissing it as Clara's immersion in her work, dispatched a cascade of texts that returned no reply. On WhatsApp, the single blue, tick, a stock indicator of a message delivered but unread, persisted with unnerving finality. As hours bled into a full, agonizing day, a profound chill settled into Emily's heart. a chilling counterpoint to the vibrant warmth of Clara's last communication. Clara Hayes, a woman whose life was meticulously ordered, whose every plan was precisely executed, had simply vanished, leaving behind only the cold silence of an empty inbox and a sister's burgeoning desperate dread. Oakhaven's peaceful illusion was poised to crumble, revealing a terrifying void where a vibrant life once stood. As the hours bled into a terrifying silence, Emily's unease solidified into outright panic. Her fingers, a blur of motion, against the screen, frantically scrolled through her phone contacts, dialing every number associated with Clara. Each unanswered ring resonated with a hollow certainty, amplifying Emily's dreadful conviction that something had gone terribly awry. Clara was not merely unpunctual. She was a meticulous creature of habit. A deviation from her established routine, especially after a promised call, signaled not a minor oversight but an urgent, undeniable crisis. Emily's first desperate step involved contacting the Airbnb platform, formally reporting her sister as a missing guest. The automated response system, with its sterile prompts and impersonal tone, felt cruelly inadequate against the tidal wave of her mounting terror. After navigating a labyrinth of digital bureaucracy, enduring countless clicks and soul-numbing menus, she finally connected with a human representative. The agent, adhering to protocol, attempted to reach the host, Arthur Finch. Minutes later, Arthur's initial response was relayed by the Airbnb representative, his voice unsettlingly composed, utterly devoid of the slightest tremor of concern. "Oh, mens. Hayes, yes. She checked out early. Said she had a change of plans." These words, meant to reassure instead, struck Emily with a chilling, visceral impact. It was entirely uncharacteristic for Claire to alter a planned booking so abruptly, much less without a single word to her sister. Emily's gut churned with a primal certainty. This was a fabrication, a meticulously crafted lie. Ignoring the platform's measured advice to observe a 24-hour waiting period, Emily immediately dialed the Oakhaven Police Department. Her voice, strained and taut, conveyed a desperate fusion of fear and an unshakable belief that her sister was in grave peril. She recounted Clara's unwavering reliability, her consistent communication, and the host's suspiciously vague, almost too perfect explanation. The dispatcher, accustomed to calls born of anxiety, listened patiently, but Emily sensed the familiar underlying skepticism, another concerned relative, another potential overreaction. Officer Ben Carter, the first to respond to Emily's impassioned plea, arrived at the cliffside retreat later that evening. The raw ocean wind whipped at his uniform, carrying the sharp, briny tang of the sea. The cottage was enveloped in darkness, silent and securely locked from the outside. A methodical perimeter check yielded nothing overtly amiss, no signs of forced entry, no struggle, nothing to suggest immediate foul play. Yet the interior, once cautiously accessed with a spare key provided by Arthur, began to whisper a different, more unsettling narrative. Clara's art supplies, a half-finished canvas still propped on her travel easel, her favorite ceramic mug resting on the bedside table, all remained in their familiar places, creating an eerie tableau, as if she might return at any moment. But her distinctive navy travel bag, the one she always packed with essentials, and her laptop items, she would never abandon for an early departure, were conspicuously damningly absent. Officer Carter radioed back to dispatch, a new, graver tone entering his voice. "We have a confirmed missing person. No obvious signs of struggle on initial observation, but the discrepancies inside the residence, they are deeply concerning." The initial calm that had settled over the small town was now irrevocably fractured, replaced by the chilling, undeniable truth. The search for Clara Hayes had only just begun, and the tranquil setting harbored a deepening, sinister enigma. The early morning light cast long, accusatory shadows as Detective Sergeant Lena Kahn and Detective Mark Riley arrived at the cliffside retreat. Seasoned veterans of grim discoveries and baffling disappearances, they approached the scene with a methodical precision, their gazes already probing for inconsistencies, for the silent whispers of a story untold. Their immediate priority, a formal interview with Arthur Finch. Arthur, impeccably dressed even at this hour in a crisp navy shirt and pressed trousers, greeted them with an unblemished, almost automatic composure. He offered them coffee, his hand steady as he poured from a silver carafe. Detective Kahn, pragmatic and acutely observant, noted his unwavering eye contact, a trait that could signify forthrightness or just as easily a meticulously constructed facade. Arthur began his narrative, his voice even and devoid of genuine alarm, as if recounting a routine transaction. Mrs. Hayes decided to cut her trip short, he explained, a subtle gesture towards the empty guest room accompanying his words. She informed me late Sunday evening. There was a family emergency, she said, quite urgent, necessitating her departure first thing Monday morning. I offered assistance, naturally, but she insisted on privacy. Mentioned she'd pre-booked a taxi for a dawn pickup. He described Clara as unusual, highly introverted, even somewhat capricious, suggesting her sudden exit wasn't entirely outside her character. He recalled witnessing her carry her luggage, the distinct navy travel bag, and a laptop case to a waiting vehicle just as the first blush of dawn touched the horizon. When pressed for details about the taxi service, he offered a vague hand wave, a slight shrug. One of the local ones, I presumed. They're all much of a muchness, aren't they? I didn't catch the name. Detective Riley, quiet but analytically perceptive, exchanged an almost imperceptible glance with Kahn. The small, isolated town of Oak Haven maintained only 2 licensed taxi services, Oak Haven Cabs and Coastal Ride. A swift, discreet inquiry to both had already confirmed no booking for Clara Hayes, nor any early Monday morning pickups from the cliffside retreat. Arthur's narrative, while delivered with a convincing calm and an air of helpful cooperation, began to fray at the edges. His placid demeanor, initially interpreted as a sign of a cooperative citizen, now carried an undercurrent of something less benign, a calculated, almost indifferent detachment. He spoke of Clara with a polite distance, his words carefully chosen, utterly lacking any genuine concern for her fate. She seemed quite determined to leave. He reiterated, his gaze fixed on Detective Kahn, almost daring her to find fault. A quick goodbye, a wave, and she was off into the early morning mist. The detectives concluded the initial interview, the silence of the station now more eloquent than Arthur's detailed account. Kahn, her expression, unreadable, simply stated his story is too seamless, Mark. Too well rehearsed for truth. And the taxi, that's not just a loose thread, it's a severed one. The illusion of a plausible explanation, meticulously woven by Arthur Finch, was already showing its first telling unravelings. The initial investigation expanded with methodical urgency, transforming Oak Haven's quietude into a hive of activity. The local community, tight-knit and accustomed to its tranquil rhythms, was thoroughly canvassed. Officers meticulously documented every interaction, yet the answers were uniformly unhelpful. Not a single resident recalled seeing Clara Hayes depart on Monday, nor any vehicle consistent with a taxi arriving at the retreat at dawn. The few elderly neighbors nearest Arthur Finch's secluded property, steeped in the sea's placid daily rhythms, reported only the usual ebb and flow of dawn. No unusual vehicles, no departing guests. The stark absence of corroboration for Arthur's carefully constructed story formed the first undeniable fissure in his seemingly impenetrable facade. With community leads, exhausted detectives turned their attention to the area's sparse surveillance network. A gas station camera, the only one strategically positioned on the main road from the retreat, was painstakingly reviewed. Its grainy footage, played back frame by frame, offered no glimpse of a taxi, nor Clara's distinctive, eco-friendly car leaving the area during Arthur's stipulated timeline. It was as if Clara Hayes had not merely departed, but had simply dissolved into the thin coastal air, leaving no discernible trace of her alleged exit. Emily Hayes arrived in Oak Haven a day later, propelled by a whirlwind of raw grief and unshakable determination. Her pale face etched with worry, and bearing the faint tracks of unshed tears, offered a stark, visceral counterpoint to Arthur's unsettlingly placid demeanor. She immediately filed a comprehensive missing persons report meticulously outlining Clara's life, a responsible, communicative woman whose sudden, silent disappearance was utterly irreconcilable with her nature. Clara would never simply vanish, Emily insisted, her voice trembling, yet resolute, her hands clenching into tight fists. Not without a word to me. Not without her laptop, where her entire novel lived. It feels as though someone has deliberately scrubbed her existence. Her raw conviction resonated deeply with the detectives, solidifying their own nascent suspicions. But it was Emily who, in her agonizing quest to grasp the incomprehensible, provided the crucial, unsettling detail that deepened the mystery into something profoundly sinister. While assisting police in cataloging Clara's remaining belongings at the cottage, a collection of beloved books, an unfinished manuscript, a favorite cashmere scarf, Emily's hand brushed against something unexpected, a small leather-bound journal hidden deep within a suitcase Arthur had explicitly claimed Clara took with her. Its undeniable presence shattered his specific account. The journal, carefully concealed beneath layers of clothing, contained entries from Clara's final days that were chillingly prescient. Her elegant script detailed a growing unease. Arthur's frequent, almost intrusive appearances, his unsettling compliments, as Clara penned them, created a suffocating atmosphere. One entry, dated Sunday night, etched in a slightly bolder, more frantic hand, read, "Arthur is just too much. He keeps asking about my schedule, my family, my plans. I feel a prickle of unease, a cold dread creeping in. Oak Haven isn't as peaceful as it seems. I need to leave, perhaps even earlier than planned, but stealthily, without him knowing." The journal's discovery was a chilling revelation, immediately casting a malevolent shadow over Arthur's meticulously crafted narrative. The quiet, obliging host was no longer merely providing an uncorroborated alibi. He was now squarely in the shadow of profound, undeniable suspicion. The polished veneer of his character was not merely fractured. It was beginning to splinter, revealing the chilling glimpse of a dark, predatory intent beneath. The digital world, often a silent witness to our lives, now became the searing focal point of the investigation. Detective Mark Riley, known for his relentless, almost intuitive approach to cyber forensics, meticulously began sifting through Clara Hayes's online existence. Her laptop, left behind at the cottage despite Arthur Finch's emphatic claims that she had taken all her belongings, became an immediate treasure trove of information. The first crucial discovery was a draft WhatsApp message composed but never dispatched, intended for a close friend. The words still lingering in the digital ether were chillingly prescient feeling watched. Might need to leave early. He's intense. The timestamp confirmed its creation late Sunday night, mere hours before Arthur claimed Clara had checked out due to a family emergency. This unsent message, a private cry for help, directly dismantled Arthur's narrative of a pre-planned calm departure. Clara's internal struggle, her burgeoning fear, was now explicitly documented, preserved in the cold light of a screen. Further investigation into Clara's browser history revealed a series of increasingly frantic queries. In the hours leading up to her disappearance, she had searched for coastal safety, Oak Haven, then Airbnb host ratings, privacy concerns, and finally how to leave Airbnb early without host interaction. These digital breadcrumbs, meticulously laid by Clara herself, painted a stark and terrifying picture. Her initial serene escape had rapidly devolved into a suffocating sense of dread, culminating in a desperate, covert plan for an exit. The data trail was not merely building a new narrative, it was constructing a sinister one, placing Arthur Finch firmly at its dark heart. Meanwhile, efforts to access Clara's personal phone proved challenging, a significant hurdle in the digital landscape. It had been intentionally and thoroughly wiped, a sophisticated deletion that suggested either a perpetrator with a chilling knowledge of data forensics or someone who took extreme measures to erase every last vestige of communication. This raised a critical, unsettling question for the detectives. If Clara had wiped her phone in preparation for a stealthy departure, why would she leave her laptop untouched, a repository of her fears? And if she was simply leaving early, why such a dramatic, irreversible act? The inconsistencies mounted, each digital crumb pointing away from Arthur's benign narrative, accelerating the momentum of suspicion. Armed with this burgeoning digital evidence and the highly suspicious journal entries unearthed by Emily, Detective Khan wasted no time. She moved swiftly, securing search warrants for Arthur Finch's digital devices, his personal laptop, his smartphone, and any smart home devices present within the cliffside retreat. The focus of the investigation narrowed sharply, intensifying around the deceptive host. The serene coastal haven was slowly but inexorably revealing its darker underbelly, and the image of the unassuming proprietor was rapidly transforming into that of a prime suspect. The pursuit of truth, once a hopeful search for a missing person, had now undeniably become the grim, calculated pursuit of a killer. The cliffside retreat, once a picturesque haven, now lay transformed into a meticulous crime scene. Forensic teams descended upon the property, their white-suited figures moving with a somber, almost ritualistic purpose through every room. The objective was chillingly clear: uncover physical evidence that would corroborate Clara's unsettling digital breadcrumbs and the dire warnings in her journal. The initial walkthrough had revealed nothing obvious, yet detectives knew that perpetrators often cleaned with a frantic, desperate intensity. The guest bedroom, Clara's final space of rest, received paramount attention. Technicians systematically sprayed luminol, a chemical solution designed to react with even the most minute traces of blood. In the darkened room, an eerie blue luminescence bloomed into view. Faint, almost invisible spatter patterns emerged on the wall behind where the headboard had been, subtle discolorations suggesting a violent impact. A disturbing smear near the drain in the ensuite bathroom also glowed with a telltale blue. These patterns spoke volumes, a struggle, a violent event, followed by a meticulous yet ultimately imperfect attempt at cleanup. The quantity of visible reaction was minimal, underscoring a careful, methodical effort to erase every last trace of what had transpired. He worked hard to hide it. A forensic tech murmured her gloved finger, indicating a subtle discoloration under the baseboard. But not hard enough. The search then expanded to the living area, a space that initially exuded cozy charm with its grand stone fireplace. Detective Riley, with his keen eye for architectural anomalies, paused abruptly. He noticed a subtle variation in the wood paneling, adjacent to the hearth, a slight difference in the grain, a near imperceptible seam. His instincts sharpened. Prying it open, they discovered a cleverly concealed narrow staircase leading down into a dusty, unused basement. The space below, cold and damp, seemed at first glance devoid of immediate relevance, packed with forgotten storage boxes, disused furniture, and stacks of firewood. Yet the air itself felt heavy, stagnant, imbued with a profound stillness. It was in this neglected space that a subtle but critical detail emerged. A small section of the concrete floor, beneath a heavy tarpaulin-covered pile of firewood, appeared distinctly newer, a slightly different shade with microscopic cracks that suggested recent disturbance. It was almost perfectly camouflaged, designed to blend seamlessly, but to the trained eye it screamed of recent, deliberate intervention. While the forensics team meticulously processed the basement detective, Khan had already delegated a comprehensive background check on Arthur Finch. His past, it turned out, was not as pristine as his outward persona suggested. 2 years prior, a young woman from out of state, an Airbnb guest at the cliffside retreat, had filed a formal complaint with the platform alleging invasion of privacy and unwanted advances. The complaint, initially dismissed by Airbnb due to insufficient corroborating evidence, described Arthur's intrusive questions and unexpected appearances. The pattern, though subtle, was becoming alarmingly clear, tightening the noose of suspicion around the host. The cliffside retreat was not merely a scenic Airbnb. For Arthur Finch, it appeared to be a meticulously managed hunting ground, and Clara Hayes had become his latest tragic prey. The grim discovery below the floorboards felt grimly inevitable, a horrifying testament to a calculated malevolence finally laid bare. Arthur Finch was ushered into the sterile, windowless interrogation room, a space deliberately designed to intensify psychological pressure. Detective Sergeant Lena Khan, a master of the nuanced psychological engagement, occupied the seat opposite him, her expression a neutral mask, her gaze an unyielding point of focus. Detective Mark Riley sat slightly apart, a silent observing force, his pen poised over a pad of paper. The initial phase of questioning aimed to disarm, to cultivate a fragile, superficial rapport. Khan's voice remained calm, empathetic, articulating the department's singular objective to locate Clara Hayes. Arthur, maintaining his well-practiced composure, recounted his story with an unsettling ease, his hands clasped neatly on the table. "I've conveyed everything I know," he stated, a hint of manufactured weariness softening his tone. "She simply departed." Khan then subtly shifted her approach, her voice still level, but now infused with a deliberate, unmistakable edge of steel. She introduced the first, undeniable inconsistency, the unsent WhatsApp message recovered from Clara's laptop. "Miss Hayes documented a feeling of being watched, Mr. Finch. She expressed a desire to leave stealthily. Does this align with a departure prompted by an urgent family emergency?" Arthur's meticulously crafted self-possession flickered. His eyes darted momentarily to the corner of the room, a brief telltale flicker of unease. I cannot account for her private musings," he stammered, his voice acquiring a discernible strain. Guests are entitled to their own reasons for such dramatic phrasing. Next, the journal. Khan produced photocopies of the damning entries, the words over-attentiveness, unsettling compliments, and feeling watched stark against the white pages. She laid them deliberately on the table between them, a silent accusatory tableau. Miss Hayes meticulously detailed a growing discomfort with you, Mr. Finch. She formulated a plan for a covert exit. Why would she commit such sentiments to paper? If you were merely a helpful, unassuming host, this particular revelation struck a palpable chord. Arthur's jaw tightened, a muscle clenching beneath his groomed beard. These are mere fictions, he snapped, his voice rising for the first time, losing its composed cadence. I extended nothing but courtesy. Perhaps Mrs. Hayes possessed an overactive imagination, a proclivity for fantasy. His denial was sharp, but the professional detachment he had so carefully maintained was now visibly fraying, exposing a raw seam of defensiveness. The absence of a confirmed taxi service was the subsequent strategic blow. Mr. Finch, Oakhaven, operates only 2 licensed taxi services. Neither recorded a booking for Miss Hayes. No one witnessed her leaving your property. Her vehicle remains parked outside. Her laptop, an indispensable tool for her work, also remained. Your explanation, sir, fails to withstand even the most fundamental scrutiny. Arthur scoffed, a tight, humorless sound escaping his lips. Perhaps she walked, or a friend collected her. It is a small town, but not a prison. He shifted agitatedly in his seat, his previous calm now replaced by a simmering, barely contained frustration. The detectives observed, assessing. The man before them was not merely denying. He was improvising, constructing increasingly flimsy possibilities in real time, a clear indication of a desperate mind grasping for control, its hold on the narrative slipping. The interrogation room, once a neutral space, had irrevocably become a battleground of wills, and Arthur Finch was slowly but inexorably losing his footing, sinking deeper into his own labyrinth of deceit. The meticulous efforts of the forensic team in the hidden basement of the cliffside retreat culminated in the chilling breakthrough the detectives had so relentlessly pursued. Beneath the suspicious patch of newer concrete painstakingly chiseled away by forensic excavators lay a fresh layer of disturbed earth. The soil, rich and dark, yielded its grim secret within hours. Just as the afternoon light began to wane, a shovel struck something solid, something unmistakably human, eliciting a collective, hushed intake of breath from the grim-faced technicians. This discovery sent a wave of quiet, grim resolution through the entire team. Clara Hayes's remains were found crudely buried, enveloped in a heavy stained tarp, one that perfectly matched a piece discovered partially concealed behind a stack of firewood in the same subterranean space. The sight was a visceral confirmation of the detective's gravest fears, a stark illustration of the brutal truth that had lurked beneath Arthur Finch's composed exterior. Forensic pathologists and crime scene investigators toiled through the night, their floodlights cutting through the oppressive dampness of the basement, meticulously examining both the burial site and the remains. They unearthed vital pieces of evidence. Clutched in the soil near Clara's body, almost as if ripped from her assailant in a final, desperate act of defiance, was a single distinctive brass button intricately carved with a nautical motif, a small anchor encircled by rope. It was unequivocally not from Clara's attire. It was clearly from a man's garment. Further analysis of the burial site also detected the presence of a residue later identified by preliminary tests as a potent, fast-acting sedative consistent with a knockout drug. This chilling detail strongly suggested a premeditated attack, a calculated attempt to incapacitate Clara before she could mount any effective resistance, stripping her of all agency. Meanwhile, Detective Riley, immersed in his work through the night at the Oakhaven precinct, had been painstakingly cross-referencing Arthur Finch's digital footprint. His diligence uncovered an old social media photograph from a local community event taken years prior, depicting Arthur wearing a casual button-down shirt. The shirt, a distinctive dark blue, with a subtle texture, featured buttons that, when magnified, proved to be an exact, unmistakable match to the unique nautical one found near Clara's body. The digital trace, often invisible to the naked eye, had provided the undeniable conclusive link. The confluence of evidence, Clara's blood in the bedroom forensically confirmed as hers, the presence of a powerful sedative pointing directly to deliberate intent, the distinctive button now definitively linked to Arthur Finch, and her body crudely concealed in his own basement, wove an undeniable, irrefutable tapestry of guilt. The search for a missing person had tragically concluded, replaced by the grim certainty of a murder investigation. With the discovery of Clara Hayes's body, the quiet coastal town of Oakhaven would never again simply be a picturesque haven. The illusion of safety, once so carefully constructed by its host, had been violently, brutally shattered, revealing the chilling abyss beneath. Arthur Finch was ushered back into the stark, windowless interrogation room, the unflinching overhead light cruelly accentuating the deeper lines of fatigue and fear now etched into his face. Yet even beneath this unforgiving glare, he still attempted to project a semblance of his earlier composure, his jaw subtly rigid. This time, however, there would be no pretense of a cooperative exchange. The delicate dance of interrogation had reached its brutal end. Detective Sergeant Lena Khan, her voice a low, steady current, began to meticulously lay out the evidence, each fact delivered with chilling, irrefutable precision. "Mr. Finch," she began, her eyes locked onto his, leaving no avenue for his gaze to escape. "We located Clara Hayes. She was in your basement, buried beneath a section of concrete you recently poured." Arthur's carefully constructed composure, once so rigidly maintained, visibly shattered. His breath hitched, a sudden ragged gasp, and his gaze finally tore from hers, sweeping frantically around the room, as if searching for an escape that simply did not exist. That's impossible," he stammered, his voice thin and reedy, a stark contrast to his earlier controlled tones. Someone must have planted her there. It's a fabrication." Khan then produced the evidence, enlarged, stark photographs of the luminol reactive blood spatter in Clara's bedroom. Next, the distinct nautical button, sealed within an evidence bag. Finally, the forensic analysis, confirming the potent sedative residue. She placed them across the table, one by one, each item a relentless hammer blow to his remaining defenses. "Her blood was found in her bedroom, Mr. Finch Khan," continued her voice unwavering. "Meticulously cleaned, but still undeniably present. This button," she held up the bag containing the brass button with its anchor motif, "is from a shirt we've seen you wear. It's an exact match. And the sedative that speaks to premeditation, sir, not a family emergency or a casual departure." The sheer crushing weight of the accumulated evidence pressed down on him, suffocating his flailing attempts at outright denial. The cat and mouse game had concluded. Arthur's meticulously constructed options were exhausted. He finally broke, but his collapse was not one of tearful confession or anguished remorse for the life he had extinguished. Instead, his persona shifted again, morphing into one of chillingly manipulative self-preservation. He began to weave a new grotesque narrative, a desperate attempt to mitigate his guilt, to twist the truth into something more palatable for himself, and, he hoped, for the authorities. He claimed Clara had become infatuated with him, that she had made unwanted advances, and that the ensuing struggle had been in self-defense. He painted Clara as the aggressor, a woman scorned, twisting her journal entries to imply she was unhinged, emotionally unstable. He confessed to burying her, but only out of panic to hide an accidental tragedy, a narrative meticulously designed to minimize his culpability. As he spoke, his voice regaining some of its earlier composure, the details he provided were meticulously crafted to deflect blame, to recast himself as the victim. For a single telling beat, the seasoned detective's mask of objectivity faltered, revealing a primal fury at the sheer audacity of his perfidy. It was a silent, uncharacteristic condemnation from a woman who had witnessed the darkest corners of humanity, a testament to the profound depths of Arthur Finch's depravity. He offered a performative, disingenuous apology delivered with a chilling lack of genuine emotion, thereby sealing his fate. He had taken a life, and then in a final act of unconscionable cruelty, tried to steal her very reputation. The quiet dignity of the Oak Haven County Courthouse stood in stark, almost defiant contrast to the brutal crime it was now tasked to address. Every seat in courtroom 3B was filled to capacity, a tangible tension hanging in the recycled air, thick with the weight of expectation, anticipation, and an underlying dread. For months, the town had buzzed with whispers of Clara Hayes, her baffling disappearance, the frantic search, and the subsequent horrifying discovery that had torn through their tranquil seaside community. Now, the time for whispers was over. The time for a public accounting, a demand for justice had irrevocably arrived. At the defense table, Arthur Finch sat meticulously dressed in a tailored suit, projecting an unsettling, almost serene composure. A subtle, almost imperceptible smirk occasionally flickered across his lips, a chilling counterpoint to the raw grief etched onto the faces in the front row of the gallery. There, Emily Hayes, Clara's younger sister, sat flanked by her parents, her gaze fixed with an unyielding, almost desperate intensity on the man accused of irrevocably shattering their world. Presiding over the proceedings was Judge Eleanor Vance, her stern, unyielding presence a constant, silent reminder of the trial's immense gravity. Leading the charge for the state was Assistant District Attorney Sarah Chen, a formidable prosecutor known for her razor-sharp intellect and a methodical, relentless approach to dismantling deceit. Opposing her, Arthur's defense counsel, the renowned criminal attorney Marcus Thorne, a man whose reputation for sowing doubt in the most airtight of cases was legendary, stood ready to wage a meticulously planned war on every piece of evidence. A D.A. Sarah Chen rose, her movements deliberate, her voice calm but resonant, effortlessly commanding immediate attention. She began, not with a cold enumeration of dry facts, but with a vibrant portrait, a portrait of Clara Hayes. Clara Hayes came to Oak Haven, seeking peace. Chen articulated, her eyes sweeping deliberately over the jury, her voice echoing the opening hook's thematic resonance without directly repeating it. A quiet place to write, to dream, to simply find herself amidst the beauty of coastal Maine. Instead, she found a meticulously crafted facade of hospitality, a welcoming smile, that concealed a predator. Arthur Finch, the man you see before you today, did not simply offer her a room, he offered her a trap. This case, ladies and gentlemen, is about obsession, about control, and about a brutal act of violence designed to silence a woman who had dared to see through his carefully constructed lies. Chen then precisely outlined the state's unwavering intention to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Arthur Finch intentionally lured Clara, systematically incapacitated her, brutally murdered her, and then, in an act of profound desecration, buried her beneath his own floorboards, attempting to erase her from existence as if she were merely an inconvenient stain upon his pristine reputation. The first witness called by the prosecution was Emily Hayes. Her entrance into the witness box, a slim figure radiating an almost unbearable sorrow, was met with a reverent hush from the gallery. Her voice, initially a fragile whisper, found an unexpected tremulous strength as she began to recount the cherished memories of her sister. Claire was larger than life. Emily testified, her gaze unwavering, as it met Arthur Finch's impassive stare across the room. Her laugh could fill a room with genuine joy. Her mind was vibrant, constantly brimming with ideas for her writing, for her art. She had a future, 1,000 unspoken plans, dreams that he stole every single one. Emily's voice, though thick with emotion, grew clearer as she detailed the last video call just days before Claire vanished. She vividly described Claire's bubbling excitement about the dramatic sunset over the Oakhaven Bluffs, her sister's face illuminated by the golden light, the casual promise to call Monday morning, a routine they had never broken. That call never came. Emily's voice cracked slightly, a visible tremor rippling through her frame, and my world, our family's world, was torn to pieces. He didn't just take Clara. He ripped a piece of our very soul, leaving a gaping wound that will never truly heal. Her raw, unvarnished words hung heavy in the air, a poignant, agonizing accusation aimed squarely at the man sitting impassively at the defense table, his expression betraying nothing. Defense attorney Marcus Thorne approached Emily with a measured, almost solicitous step, his questions meticulously designed to subtly undermine her credibility without appearing overtly insensitive to her grief. "Miss Hayes," he began gently, his tone almost sympathetic, "you mentioned your sister was a writer, a creative soul. Did she ever incorporate elements of heightened drama or even exaggerated anxieties into her fictional work, or perhaps her personal correspondence?" Emily's eyes narrowed, a flash of protective anger igniting within them. She leaned forward slightly. "Claire wrote fiction, Mr. Thorne. She didn't invent her fears. They were real, profoundly real, and she documented them." Thorne, his voice retaining its soft, almost hypnotic cadence, pressed further. "Is it possible that your sister, being a deeply imaginative individual, might have expressed internal anxieties that were perhaps not entirely based in objective external fact, that her words could be interpreted as artistic expression rather than literal distress?" Emily's voice hardened, gaining a steely, unyielding edge. "Her fear was real, Mr. Thorne. Her journal proves it. Her laptop proves it. And her body found buried beneath his house proves it to the sickening core of reality." The prosecution then moved with deliberate, unyielding purpose to the forensic evidence, a cornerstone of their case. Dr. Anya Sharma, the lead medical examiner, was called to the stand. Dr. Sharma, with a calm, professional demeanor that belied the horror of her findings, presented a stark clinical account of Clara Hayes's final brutal moments. She meticulously detailed the specific injuries Clara sustained, consistent with a violent struggle, but pointed definitively to the primary cause of death: blunt force trauma to the head delivered with significant life-ending force. Then came the chilling revelation of the toxicology report projected onto the large screen for the jury to see. Tests confirmed the presence of a potent sedative, specifically zolpidem, in Hayes' system. Dr. Sharma stated, her voice even and scientific. It was administered prior to her death at a dosage consistent with incapacitation. This strongly suggests she was rendered unconscious or severely disoriented and defenseless before the fatal blow was delivered. The jury listened, wrapped their faces a mixture of horror and grim comprehension, as the cold scientific facts painted a horrifying, indisputable picture of a premeditated, brutal attack, stripping Clara of any chance to resist. Detective Mark Riley, presenting a picture of focused procedural efficiency, took the stand next. He meticulously detailed the digital trail Clara had inadvertently yet powerfully left behind. On Miss Hayes' laptop recovered from the cliffside retreat, we discovered a draft WhatsApp message composed, but unsent, dated late Sunday evening. Riley explained, a projected image of the damning message appearing on the courtroom screen. Feeling watched. Might need to leave early. He's intense. Riley continued, his voice devoid of overt emotion, allowing the facts to speak. Her browser history further corroborated this growing anxiety. Searches included coastal safety, Oak Haven, Airbnb post ratings, privacy concerns, and crucially, how to leave Airbnb early without host interaction. These searches were conducted hours before Mr. Finch claims she checked out due to a family emergency, directly contradicting his narrative and exposing its fundamental flaw. Riley then addressed Clara's mysteriously wiped phone. The phone exhibited a sophisticated, deliberate wipe, consistent with an attempt to erase all data. This is not typical behavior for someone simply leaving early. It points to a calculated effort to destroy a communication history, an act most consistent with the perpetrator. Officer Ben Carter, the first responder to Emily's initial frantic call, described the scene at the cliffside retreat, focusing on the discovery of the cleverly concealed basement and the patch of newly laid concrete. Beneath that concrete, Carter recounted, his voice steady, the grim details etched into his memory. We uncovered mess. Hayes' remains, wrapped in a heavy tarp, matching one found partially hidden behind a stack of firewood in that same basement. And in the soil, clutched almost as if in a final, desperate act of defiance, was this. He held up an evidence bag containing the distinct brass button with its nautical motif. This button was unequivocally not Mrs. It was from a man's shirt. He concluded by confirming the undisputed forensic match of this unique button to a photograph of Arthur Finch's shirt, definitively linking the accused to the hidden grave and the ultimate heinous act. The defense, led by Marcus Thorne, then began its counteroffensive, a deliberate, multi-pronged strategy designed to pick apart the prosecution's narrative piece by painstaking seeking to introduce the elusive concept of reasonable doubt. Thorne, a master of rhetoric and theatrical delivery, argued that coastal safety searches were merely prudent behavior for any solo female traveler. He suggested the unsent message could be a product of a writer's vivid imagination, or even an internal conflict about prematurely ending her trip, not an external threat. Painted Clara as an individual prone to emotional fluctuations, hinting that her journal entries were colored by a volatile personality that could have led to misinterpretations or escalations in interaction. His aim was clear: to chip away at Clara's character, to introduce even a sliver of reasonable doubt that Arthur's actions, while perhaps regrettable in their aftermath, were not the premeditated act of murder. Then came the highly anticipated testimony of Arthur Finch himself. Arthur took the stand, surprisingly composed, almost serene in his tailored suit, a performance of self-assured innocence. Under direct examination by Marcus Thorne, he maintained his meticulously crafted facade, his voice smooth and controlled, laced with just enough regret to seem believable to a casual observer. Mrs. Hayes grew increasingly personal during her stay. Arthur stated, his voice even yet subtly imbued with a suggestion of discomfort and fabricated victimhood. She began to make advances unexpected and unwelcome. On Sunday night, she became quite agitated when I gently rebuffed her. There was a struggle, yes. She lunged at me. I reacted defensively. It was an accident. A tragic, unforeseen accident born of her aggression. He recounted burying her out of overwhelming panic, a desperate, misguided attempt to avoid scandal and ruin his carefully cultivated reputation, emphatically denying any intent to conceal a murder. This performance was chillingly calm, a master manipulator, attempting to control the narrative even in the face of overwhelming truth-twisting facts, to his advantage with every carefully chosen word, every subtle pause. Sarah Chen approached Arthur for cross-examination, her voice sharp, her posture commanding an unyielding force of truth. She wasted no time in systematically dismantling his revised narrative. Mr. Finch, you state Mrs. Hayes made unwanted advances. Yet her journal entries, which we have presented, clearly express her discomfort with your over-attentiveness, your intrusive questions. Are you suggesting she meticulously wrote lies in her private journal, documenting fictional fears? Arthur shifted uncomfortably, a flicker of genuine irritation barely suppressed crossing his face. Her perspective perhaps was clouded by her own projections, her own emotional state. Chen pressed her voice, cutting like a scalpel through his manufactured calm. You claim overwhelming panic led you to bury her under concrete in your basement. Yet you also meticulously cleaned the blood from the bedroom. You took the time to wipe her phone, ensuring no communication history remained. Does this sound like the actions of a man in panic, Mr. Finch, or careful, calculated concealment of a murder? Arthur stammered, visibly flustered, his composure beginning to visibly fray. I was in shock, confused by the entire tragic situation. Chen countered relentlessly, her voice rising with each question, confused enough to remember to initially lie to police, claiming Miss Hayes took her laptop and travel bag, even though those items were later found right there in the cottage left behind. She held up a stark photograph of the laptop and bag. Which is it, Mr. Finch? Was she a delusional guest, making unwanted advances, or a fearful woman planning to escape your unwelcome attention? A plan you then brutally interrupted, silencing her forever. Arthur's meticulously constructed veneer began to audibly crack under the relentless barrage. His answers became increasingly evasive, his body language more defensive, his composure slowly unraveling under the crushing weight of his own inconsistencies and transparent lies. Sarah Chen's closing argument was a powerful, devastating synthesis of all the evidence, connecting every detail into an undeniable narrative of premeditated murder. She strode purposefully before the jury, her voice unwavering, filling the courtroom with her conviction. Arthur Finch, did not merely host Clara Hayes, he hunted her. He cultivated the illusion of a peaceful retreat, a sanctuary as his sinister cover preying on a vulnerable woman seeking solitude and escape. His claims of self-defense are not just fabrications. They are a despicable attempt to further desecrate Clara's memory, to shift blame onto the victim he so brutally murdered, painting her as the instigator of her own demise. She systematically recounted the digital trail of Clara's growing fear, the irrefutable forensic evidence of the violent struggle and subsequent cleanup, the incapacitating sedative, the distinct button linking him directly to the crime, and the ultimate horrifying discovery of her body hidden in his own home. Every single piece of evidence, every detail we have painstakingly laid before you, Chen emphasized, her gaze sweeping over each juror, meeting their eyes directly, tells the same immutable, undeniable story, a story of calculated malevolence, of a vibrant life extinguished without mercy, and of a deliberate, chilling attempt to cover up a heinous crime. Justice for Clara Hayes demands nothing less than a verdict of guilty for first-degree murder. Marcus Thorne, for the defense, then delivered his final plea, his voice smooth and deeply persuasive, seeking to reintroduce the elusive, all-important concept of reasonable doubt. He moved with a practiced grace, his words carefully chosen to appeal to logic, if not sympathy. The prosecution has indeed presented a compelling story. Thorne admitted a practiced gesture of acknowledgement. But a story, however compelling, however emotionally charged, is not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. We have heard the testimony of a client who, in a moment of extreme distress and fear for his own safety and reputation, panicked, who made terrible, regrettable choices in the aftermath of a tragic accident. We have heard of a victim whose own words in her private journal suggest an unstable emotional state, a volatility that could foreseeably escalate a situation into an unforeseen tragedy. Was this a premeditated, cold-blooded murder conceived and executed with malice aforethought, or a tragic accident, a desperate, misguided act by a man overwhelmed by circumstance and his own profound fear of scandal? He urged the jury to critically consider the absence of a direct eyewitness to the fatal blow, the ambiguities he had highlighted in the forensic interpretations, and to hold the state firmly to its exceptionally high burden of proving intent beyond all doubt. If even a single shred of doubt, however small, remains in your minds, he concluded, his voice resonating with carefully controlled sincerity, then you must in good conscience find Arthur Finch not guilty of murder. The jury retired their departure, marking the commencement of an agonizing silence that descended upon the courtroom. The weight of a young woman's brutally cut short life and a man's future now rested squarely and solemnly on their collective shoulders. For Emily Hayes, the protracted, grueling battle for her sister had been waged, fought with words, with evidence, and with raw, unvarnished emotion. But the true final fight for Clara's memory now rested with 12 strangers, their faces etched with the solemn, immense responsibility of their imminent decision. The jury's deliberations stretched over 2 agonizing days, each passing hour intensifying the quiet torment for Emily and Clara's grieving family. Courtroom air, already heavy with the lingering echoes of testimony, grew thick with a pervasive, almost suffocating anticipation. For Emily, every tick of the clock resonated as a battle against encroaching despair, a silent, desperate prayer that Clara's voice, so brutally silenced, would finally be heard in the impending verdict. The protracted legal labyrinth, which had consumed weeks of their lives, now condensed into this unbearable period of waiting. Inside the jury room, The 12 strangers wrestled with the profound weight of the evidence, their faces reflecting the solemn responsibility of their decision. Initial votes revealed a division, a not uncommon occurrence in complex murder trials. 3 jurors leaned towards a lesser charge of manslaughter, momentarily swayed by Marcus Thorne's skilled arguments about panic and accidental tragedy, and the subtle, insidious insinuation of Clara's supposed emotional volatility. They fixated on the absence of a direct eyewitness to the fatal blow, and Thorne's meticulous dissection of any perceived forensic ambiguities. He was clearly overwhelmed, one juror, a retired schoolteacher, argued, her voice firm. The man made a terrible mistake, yes, but was it truly first-degree murder, a premeditated act? Yet the steadfast majority, guided by a former critical care nurse with an unwavering eye for detail and a retired engineer accustomed to rigorous logical progression, leaned heavily towards a conviction for murder. They systematically revisited a DHN's carefully constructed narrative. Detective Riley's digital forensics proved undeniably crucial. The unsent WhatsApp message, Clara's frantic, anxious search history, the sophisticated, deliberate wiping of her phone, these were not the actions of a woman initiating an unwanted advance, nor a man simply reacting spontaneously in panic. Her mounting fear was meticulously documented, the nurse stated, tapping a finger on the printout of Clara's journal entries. She felt watched. She planned to leave discreetly. This was no impulsive flirtation gone awry. This was a calculated pursuit, culminating in her incapacitation. The engineer meticulously re-examined the luminol photographs depicting Clara's bedroom. "Observe the spatter patterns," he urged, pointing to a diagram with a steady finger. This wasn't merely a bump on the head in a moment of heated passion. This indicates a sustained struggle, followed by a deliberate, painstaking cleanup, and a sedative that decisively removes any notion of a fair fight, of a mere accident. The damning discovery of Clara's body in the concealed basement, entombed beneath freshly poured concrete, became the ultimate irrefutable evidence of premeditation and a chilling attempt at permanent erasure. No one accidentally buries a body, the engineer concluded, his voice unwavering, resonating with logical certainty. And no one in a genuine state of overwhelming panic possesses the presence of mind to meticulously clean a crime scene and then pour a new concrete slab over their victim. This speaks directly to cold, deliberate intent to conceal, to destroy every last vestige of evidence, to make her truly vanish. Slowly, methodically, the initial holdout jurors were brought around. The overwhelming combination of Clara's own chilling words in her journal, the digital breadcrumbs of her increasing fear, the clinical certainty regarding the sedative's role, and the undeniable calculated concealment of her body proved insurmountable. Thorne's desperate attempts to discredit Clara's character, initially unsettling, ultimately backfired. To cast the victim as unstable, they realized was merely another cynical layer of Arthur Finch's carefully constructed deception. By the afternoon of the second day, a consensus was reached, unanimous and unshakable. Justice for Clara Hayes was now finally within reach. When the bailiff announced that a verdict had been reached, a collective sharp gasp rippled through the gallery, a sudden intake of breath that momentarily shattered the pervasive silence. Arthur Finch stood, his face impassive, perhaps a fraction paler, but his eyes still held that unsettling vacant stare, sweeping the courtroom as if seeking some final unseen advantage. He betrayed nothing. Emily's heart hammered against her ribs with an almost painful intensity, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles shone white. She dared not breathe, dared not even hope, bracing herself for whatever truth was about to be unleashed. The foreman of the jury, a solemn-faced woman in her 50s, rose slowly. Her voice, though quiet, resonated with the profound weight of her conviction as she delivered the pronouncement. On the charge of first-degree murder, we the jury find the defendant Arthur Finch, G-U-I-L-T. The single word, G-U-I-L-T, why echoed through the hushed courtroom, a reverberating thunderclap of vindication that instantly, irrevocably altered the trajectory of Emily's life. A sob tore through her, a guttural sound of relief and profound sorrow finally unleashed after months of suffocating restraint. She collapsed into her seat, tears streaming freely, uncontrollably, blurring the faces of her family around her into sympathetic blurs. Across the aisle, a DHN allowed herself a brief, almost imperceptible nod of grim satisfaction, a silent acknowledgement of justice, hard won. Arthur Finch, however, remained a statue of stone, a subtle, almost imperceptible hardening of his jaw, the only visible reaction to his conviction. Deputies moved swiftly, leading him away, his meticulously constructed world of deception finally crumbling around him, his carefully maintained facade irrevocably shattered by the weight of undeniable truth. Weeks later, the court reconvened for sentencing. Emily, her grief still a raw, ever-present wound, yet imbued now with a fierce protective dignity, stood before the court to deliver her victim impact statement. Her voice, remarkably clear, despite the wellspring of tears that threatened to overwhelm her, addressed Arthur directly, her eyes boring into his with an unblinking, furious intensity. "You took my sister, Arthur," she began her words, slicing through the sterile air. "You extinguished her light, her innate kindness, her boundless creativity, her entire future. You stole everything she was, and everything she was destined to be. Clara Hayes was not, as your defense so cruelly tried to portray her, a delusional woman. She was vibrant. She was deeply loved. And her only crime was seeking a moment of peace, a sanctuary that you twisted into a place of unimaginable horror and death." Emily's voice gained an almost terrifying strength, her hands gripping the podium, her knuckles white against the dark wood. "You tried to erase her, Arthur. You buried her beneath concrete, treating her as if she were nothing more than refuse, an inconvenient problem. You tried to silence her voice forever. You tried to poison her memory with your abhorrent lies about unwanted advances and self-defense. But you failed. You failed utterly. Clara Hayes lives on in our memories, in every radiant sunset we witness, in every profound book we read, in every piece of art she inspired. And you, Arthur Finch, you will now live with the crushing consequence of your monstrous acts. You will live knowing that you could not and never will truly erase her. You thought you were so clever, so entirely in control, but Clara, even in death, unmasked you. This you so brutally stole from her, you will never ever find for yourself." Her words, delivered with a steely resolve that belied her trembling frame, resonated throughout the room, a powerful, indelible testament to the immeasurable human cost of the crime. Arthur Finch, from his seat, offered only an icy, vacant stare, a chilling final confirmation of his complete and utter lack of remorse. Judge Vance, her face set in a grim, unyielding expression, then handed down the maximum sentence permitted by law. Arthur Finch for the premeditated, heinous murder of Clara Hayes. The court sentences you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. You will never again walk free among society. May the memory of Clara Hayes serve as a lasting testament to the sanctity of human life, to the profound vulnerability of trust, and to the relentless, unwavering pursuit of justice. The gavel fell, a sharp, definitive sound that echoed the finality of the legal process, closing a chapter, but not the book of pain. Justice, in the cold, precise language of the law, had been meticulously served. Yet for Emily and Clara's family, it was a profound finality, not a gentle, healing closure. The gaping wound of Clara's absence would never fully mend. It would remain a phantom ache, a void that no verdict, no sentence, no passage of time could ever truly fill. Emily understood that grief was a stark, unyielding landscape she would forever navigate. But now, at least she carried Clara's truth, not the haunting, tormenting question of her fate. The murder of Clara Hayes left an indelible scar on Oakhaven, a once serene coastal town, forever tainted by the insidious darkness that had lurked beneath its picturesque facade. Her tragic story served as a chilling reminder that even in the most idyllic settings, the comforting illusion of safety can shatter with terrifying swiftness and without warning. It underscored the profound vulnerability that comes with trust, particularly in an age where homes are routinely shared with strangers through digital platforms where a welcoming host can conceal a predatory nature. The quest for justice, relentless and often unforgiving, is frequently the sole path to confronting the unseen predators who walk among us, carefully cultivating their masks of normalcy, their meticulously crafted deception. The memory of Clara Hayes, the digital nomad who sought solace and inspiration by the sea, became a poignant, enduring cautionary tale, an echo of vulnerability in an increasingly connected, yet often perilous world. Her art, her words, her vibrant spirit, though tragically cut short, became a silent, resounding call for vigilance, a stark reminder that true peace can only genuinely exist where safety unequivocally prevails, and where malevolence, however cunningly hidden, is ultimately and decisively brought to the beat. Unsparing light. In the quiet pursuit of peace, Clara Hayes found not solace, but a chilling testament to the predators lurking beneath the most inviting facades. If the relentless pursuit of justice and the unmasking of hidden malevolence in stories like Clara's resonate with you, consider subscribing to Shadow Files for more profound investigations into the dark corners of humanity. Don't forget to subscribe to Shadow Files and hit the notification bell.